Hello and welcome. My name is Trey Brimmer. I'm with Mitel, and today I'm going to go over the 6920 IP phone with you, and we're going to briefly talk about voicemail. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's a few things to remember. If you dial 911, don't hang up. Stay on the line and let them know that you dialed by accident, because even though you thought you hung up before it rang, it'll still indicate to them and they may dispatch somebody, and it could actually be charges involved. And the reason why that's kind of a big deal right now is because you need to dial a 9 and the area code for all outbound calls. So you can see you're already started down the path of 911. So it is possible, and it does happen sometimes. And if it does, stay on the line. You will need to dial 9 and area code for all outbound dialing, even local. So 9 area code and phone number. You will not need to dial a 1 for toll-free or long distance. And if you can get in a habit not to do the 1, that's better, because obviously when you hit 9 and 1, you're almost there to 911. That's why you can drop the 1 if you can. Now, if you forget and you dial the 1 anyway and you're dialing toll-free or whatever, it'll still work. But it's a good habit to kind of get in and try to stop. A habit I'm not very good at. I'm still dialing the 1, but if you can do it, good. There's a feature we call hot desking. It's the ability to log into any phone in the organization and take it over. So if for some reason you're at a different dealership, or if you're working out of a conference room for the day, or whatever the case may be, you can go up to that phone and you can put in your extension number and a PIN number and take that phone over. So with that feature in mind, if your hot desk PIN will be the same as your extension number by default. But once you set up your voicemail box, the PIN will be the same as your voicemail PIN. And as I show you the hot desk, it'll make more sense to you when I talk about these things. But kind of remember that your hot desk PIN is the same as your extension until you set up your voicemail, then it'll be the voicemail PIN. And if you remember that as we move through, it'll be a little easier. So here's the 6920 IP phone. We're going to start at the top and work our way down. We'll touch every button. I'll briefly go over what everything does to help you through it. There are other information out there. There's a quick reference guide to help you, as well as a full manual, and there is also a self-paced training that can be available to you as well. But this will just kind of make it customized, where all that stuff is generic, to let you know just for your organization how the phone is kind of designed and works. Okay, so the top portion is mostly associated to the display. Its the ability to press buttons that are associated with different functions that we've added to the phone. And then there's some soft keys at the bottom, those 4 little straight keys that you see there that allow you to access a dynamic area that'll offer you things only available when the time comes. If you're on a phone call, it'll offer you things like transfer and conference and hang up. And when your phone is idle, it'll offer you things like redial. So I'll show you as we move along. The little silver button thing you see is called a navigation tool. We'll talk about that. And then the keypad down below on either side of it has different function buttons to access different functions of the phone. And I'll make sure you know what everything does. So let's kind of take a peek at it. This is your navigation key. The navigation key is the ability to scroll up, down, left or right, and you have a select button. On the display, there'll be things that pop up if you're accessing items like your call history or your contacts. Then this navigation tool will come into play, where you'll be able to scroll around and pick somebody and that sort of thing. I'll show you when it comes into play. I'll tell you your navigation key, you can use that, or you can use a soft key on your phone. So it'll come up as we go through the presentation. So I want to make sure you knew how to operate it. Okay, hot desking. So we talked about that earlier. It's the ability to take over a phone or sit down somewhere and hot desk into the phone. It works a lot for open seating. You may be a hot desk user, which everyone is, but you may never hot desk out of your phone. So you may never need to touch it, but it's good to know how if you ever needed to. So let's kind of talk about that. If a phone is not hot desked in at all, it'll look like this. The extension number will have a pound in it, and it'll say locked in the center of the phone. And then you'll notice down in the gray area, it'll say hot desk. Those are indicators to let you know that the phone can only dial 911 or the operator. It won't work for inbound or outbound dialing. It's basically locked and useless. You can take over a phone that is logged in. So you will see once you're logged in where it says hot desk now, it'll say log out. And I can log you out and log myself into the phone temporarily. But the main thing is that you can, when you see this, you know you need to log in. To log in, it's very easy. You're going to press the hot desk, the soft key below where it says hot desk, and it'll then ask you for your extension number. So you'll put in your extension number and you'll hit enter. Once you hit enter, it'll ask you then for the PIN I was talking about earlier. You'll enter the PIN, which if you've never set up your voicemail, it'll be the same as your extension number. But once you've set up your voicemail, you'll use your PIN number that you've assigned to your voicemail. I'll show you when that comes up. Once I put that in, it'll bring the phone up to its normal state. What you can see now that it's ready to go because the extension number doesn't have a pound in it and no longer says locked. And down below it says log out rather than hot desk. These are all indicators. Also, you see over to the left-hand side up top, it has a little fella there. It's a little icon that's just letting you know you're present and you're on the phone now. It also shows up other icons that you may see. A common one is going to be this 4 with the ricochet arrow. It's just indicating that you miss calls. In this case, you missed 4 calls. And also the little square boxes are just indicating that you're on the network and that network is clean. Let's kind of look at the buttons on the phones. Starting just below where your extension number is, you can see it says My Phone, and then line 2. My Phone is line 1, and line 2 is the next phone. So if a call comes in where it says My Phone Now, it'll show caller identification number to let you know that a call's coming. It also rings and it'll show caller ID in the center of the display. I'll show you what that looks like. You got a line 2, which you will use if a second call comes in and you want to grab it. You can then, without hitting the hold key, which I'll show you where that is in a little bit, you can just hit the second line key. It'll automatically put the first caller on hold and you can grab the second call. When the phone is ringing or giving you a ring indicator for the second call, it'll also be showing you the caller identification in the body of the display. It also shows it on where it says line 2. It'll show caller ID there. Okay. The next key down is your page key. And now it's going to vary from location to location depending on how your paging is set up now. So when you hit page, it could either be your paging live, we'll have to test it once we're there, or if you currently have to hit a digit, like if you have to hit like *4 or something to page overhead, then you'll do the same process. So we'll kind of work with you on that, but that's where the page key is. It'll save you dialing the page extension, and then depending on how it's set up now is how it'll page. The other buttons you see on there where it says sales, service, and parts are all speed dials to get to those departments. You may end up needing to call somebody in sales, call someone in service, or call someone in parts. All you have to do is press the corresponding button to dial them. You can also use those keys if you need to transfer a call to sales, service, or parts. Say someone called you on accident, let me get you over to service. Then I could hit transfer, and I'll show you when that shows up where to hit transfer, and then I can hit the sales key to complete the transfer and hang up. Okay, so there's ways to transfer to those different departments. Going over to the center, you can see it has the time and the date. And then below that, if the phone is idle like it is in this case, it gives you a redial location. So if you hit the redial button that you see in the gray area, it'll dial the number that you see in the display. You'll also see 2 little dots. You'll see that the first one is colored blue and then the second one is clear. That's just letting you know that there's multiple pages on the phone. And if you use your navigation key and scroll over to the right, it'll move to the next page. And on the next page, we have 3 keys that we've added for you. These are call park keys. So what you could do is I could hit transfer and then hit call park to park a call for someone else to pick up. So you have 3 of those, and you can just basically then go back to the other page, hit hit the page key, and then tell somebody there's a call holding on park 1 or park 2 or park 3. So that's how that kind of works. And I'll show you when we get the transfer where that is. Okay. So how to program any of the blank keys. You have three keys that are available. And the nice part is it's sort of like a car stereo. You're just going to hold the key down that you want to program. And what I'm talking about is any blank key on the phone. And it'll pop up for you to be able to label, put a number in, and mark it as private if you'd like. So the label could be whatever you want: home, doctor, someone's extension down the way a little bit, whatever it is. If I'm going to put the label in, you can label it however you like. The number, if it's an outside number, it's going to be 9, area code and phone number, just like we kind of talked about earlier. And then you have the ability to mark things as private, which is the ability for people to see the label but not see the phone number. So if I wanted to put my wife's cell phone number on my phone, but I don't want people walking past my phone getting my wife's cell phone number, I can make it private and they would only see the label, which is helpful. Okay. So that's how you program those. And you can see it says save below once you do it. And you'll use the navigation key to move from the label to the number to the private. And you can make capital letters where it says ABC. You can make them capital if you prefer. And you can backspace if you make a mistake. So pretty easy to program. If you go to that, hold down the key, you can also add a feature to it. There's not a lot of features you would want to add here. Matter of fact, probably none of these. Call forward is the ability to have a button to turn off and on call forwarding from your extension to somebody else's. Do not disturb will shut your phone off for inbound call traffic. Everything will go to voicemail. Phone lock is the ability to use a code to lock your phone so other people can't use it. That's usually used in offices with cleaning crews that people are worried about or whatever. You don't have mobile line. You won't use account code verification. So not a lot there for you. So mostly you're going to set up a speed call, not the other features. Let's look at an inbound call, how that looks. And it'd be inbound or intercom would look similar. So let's kind of talk about that. Here comes the call. You can see where it said my phone before, now has the caller identification number. This is an outside call. On the main body of the display, it's giving you name and number. If it was someone internal, it would show you their extension number and their name. So you have that, and it'll tell you it's calling. So it's exactly the same if it's internal or outside. I now have the ability, you can see the gray area now has changed, and it gives me the ability to hit answer. To answer it, it'll be on speaker call or speakerphone if you hit answer. So best practice, probably pick up the handset if you're not wearing a headset to answer the call. So once we've answered the call, then it's going to change a little bit. A timer is going to begin right underneath the time and date. Caller ID will stick with it though, so you'll still have that. But you'll notice the gray area now has changed. It's giving you all the options you have once you've answered a call. So the first one is transfer. We talked about that a little earlier. If I want to transfer this to sales, service, or parts, then I would hit the key below where it says transfer, and then hit the key associated to sales, service, or parts, and it would transfer to those departments rather than transfer to an individual. If I wanted to transfer to just somebody's extension, I would just hit transfer and then dial the extension. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But you'll notice also it says add user. That's setting up a conference call. And then I also have end call. So those are all functions that are there. So let's kind of talk about the transfer. We want to transfer a call. Here we are in that same status. We've answered the call. And now what are we going to do with it? We want to transfer it. So the way it works is I want to go ahead and transfer this. I'll hit the transfer key. And you'll notice that the display changes now. I can then hit dial the extension and press transfer again to complete it. Or I can go ahead and hit one of those department buttons and hit transfer. So I could hit sales, service, or parts and then hit transfer again to complete it. Or I could go ahead and hit transfer, dial someone's extension and stay on the line and announce it to them and then hit transfer to complete it. Okay, so to end it, to get off the call and move to the next thing you want to do, you hit transfer again. So it's transfer, dial the extension, transfer again, completes the transfer. You can also see that it gives you other choices. So if I hit transfer and I dial the extension, it can then say things like join call. I could maybe add someone in rather than transfer it. I could trade calls, which would take me back to the original caller. So let's just say someone from ABC company has called. So, and I say, hey, can I help you? Can I talk to John? Sure. What I could do then is I could hit transfer, and then I could dial John's extension, stay on the line. John picks up. I say, hey, John, I have a call for you from ABC Company. They may say, hey, who is it from ABC Company? I could say, hold on. I could hit trade calls, go back to the original caller and say, what was your name, and get the name, and then hit trade call again, come back to you. So it's a way I can be in the middle of the transfer, but go between the two calls. The other thing you can do is back to held, which would cancel the transfer. So if I hit transfer, dialed your extension, I said, hey, can you take this call from ABC Company? You could say no. Would you mind having them call me back later? I can go hit back to held. That cancels the transfer, and I could start over again. So it's a way to get back to the without losing the call. I could go back before I hit the transfer and start over, maybe transfer it to somebody else or give them some information. So that's how the transfer works. Making a conference call is very similar. And you'll notice that when I hit transfer, or if I hit add user, it goes to the same next display. So it's just to keep you straight on it. But you could decide, I'm going to add a user, but at the last minute decide to finish a transfer. You could do either way. So it's kind of cool the way it works. But let's say here comes an inbound call. I've answered it, and now I need to add somebody to this call. I'll hit the add user call, and then I would dial your extension. And once you're on the call, I can have a private conversation with you. Hold on, and hit join calls, and then we're all joined together. It'll say 3-party conference on the phone. I could do that up to 7 times, so me and 7 other people, and we can all be on a conference call together. If you think that's a feature you might like or might use, my recommendation is that before you need to use it, call some people internally and just conference them together and make sure you get the feel of it. So that way, when it comes time to actually do it, you're not worried about losing somebody. You won't lose anyone, but it's nice to get a warm fuzzy on it. Once you've established the first conference, the first 3-party conference, I could always go and add another user now, you can see, or I can transfer that conference to somebody else. So I could set up a conference and then transfer it to somebody else, and all 3 of those, all the people conferenced together could stay together and I'd be off of it. I can also do a thing called split, which means I would split the conference off onto its own lines, and then I could go to each individual person and talk to them individually. So if someone was saying something I didn't want them to say, I could hit split. It would split everybody off onto their lines on hold, and I could go to each individual person and talk to them. I can also leave this call. So if I set up a conference for you, say you have 4 or 5 people on a conference, but I can't stay on the line, I can hit leave call and get off of it, and your conference call will stay together. The reason why you have to do that is because if you're calling outside people, one internal person has to be on the call. So you want to go ahead and make sure that you hit leave call if you're establishing a conference for somebody else. Okay. Let's kind of talk about the keys on either side of the dial pad. We'll start over on the left-hand side from the top, and then we'll work our way over to the right-hand side. So the left-hand side is mostly all features like contacts, call history, your voicemail settings, that sort of thing. So let's talk about those. So the first thing you have is a contacts key. What that means is it's sort of like a little phone book. You have personal contacts. These are ones that you've added in, either manually, I've added a new one, or I've gone into my call history and added it as a feature or added it as a contact. You also have what's called corporate contacts. Now, where you're adding into your personal contacts and they'll all be listed, when you go to your corporate contacts, there'll be nothing there. You'll have to spell the last name, at least one letter of the last name, to see a list. So you're not missing anything if you go to your corporate contacts and you don't see anything. You need to first put in at least one letter of the last name. So you can see personal contacts you're going to see, but corporate you need to start dialing to get to it. So if I use my navigation key and scroll down to corporate contacts, then I would just hit search, which will come up, and I would be able to look for people. Now to access my personal contacts, I could put in, like I could start scrolling in a name. I could navigate over to where it says enter name, and that would narrow down my search. If I had a lot of contacts, I can narrow it down. And then I could just scroll over and scroll down, highlighting the person I want to call, and hit the center of the navigation key and call that person, or it'll allow me to call them down below, as you will see. So here's a corporate contact. I've scrolled down to the corporate. And now I've hit the search. It brought me up there, and I start spelling the last name to find the person. Okay. Once I put in at least one letter, it'll show all those contacts that start with whose last names start with that letter. The more you put in, the closer you're going to get, obviously, and then I can use my navigation key to scroll down to find the exact person. I can also backspace if I'm spelling something or reset it to start over. Once I scroll over to the right and highlight that person, I can then hit the center of the volume key, or it'll allow me to select that person. So if I keep scrolling over, I'll see more of their contact information. So I can not only put a personal contact for a person, but I could put multiple numbers in there. So it makes it nice. Here's your call history, and I'll show you how you can add from your call history up to your personal contacts as well. So here's what call history, it separates it out. You have all the calls during the day. The latest one is up top, and it works its way down in time. Missed calls, you can separate it out by just the calls you missed. Outgoing calls, just the calls you made, or just the ones you received. So if I want to call back one of those people, I can go to the right, scroll over, and then it'll allow me to dial that person by either hitting the center of the volume key, or I can hit the soft key that says dial. I can also add to my contacts, which would add it to my personal contacts. So if someone called me and I'm like, ooh, I better keep that number, I can add them to my personal contacts. There's a delete. I don't know why you'd use that, and a close to close out of it. Okay. This is your voicemail key. This will direct you straight to voicemail. When you press that, it'll ask you for your PIN number. By default, your PIN is going to be the same as your extension, just like for hot desking. But once you go into this, it's going to go through a tutorial that'll help you set up your name, your greeting, and pick a new PIN number. And remember, that PIN is what's going to be not only for your voicemail daily, but it's also going to be for your hot desk if you ever use that functionality. We'll talk about voicemail at the very end really quick, but it's pretty easy. There's no mystery once you go into it. It walks you through everything. And every day, if you have a voicemail message and you go in, it's going to walk you through accessing that voicemail. This is the settings key. It allows you to access some of the settings. I've highlighted a few of the most used ones that you may like. One is call forward. I don't know if you guys will use call forwarding, but if you needed to forward your phone to another either extension number or to a cell phone or something, you can use call forwarding for that. And if you set up call forwarding, it looks like this. You put in the phone number just like we did for everything else, 9 area code and phone number, and then save that, and you would have your calls forwarded to that destination. You can also do conditional forwarding, like only when I'm busy, internal calls need to go to this number, or external calls need to go to this number, or if I don't answer, rather go to voicemail. For internal or external calls, I want it to go to a specific number. But most people don't use that, but it is available. Audio, if you don't like the ring, it's kind of a sing-songy ring, you can go to the audio and change the ring. There's a different ring for internal or external ringing, so you can tell if someone internally is calling you or not. All you have to do is navigate over to the name of the ring, and it'll play the ring, and just scroll down. If you like the more classic, just ring type tones, you'll see it'll start with classic 1 and work its way down from there. But that's where you can change the ringer on your phone. A lot of people don't like that kind of songy ring. So if you're one of those people, you can scroll around till you find one that's comfortable for you, for both internal and external. Once you have the ring you like, just hit save. The display, I only show you this because it bothers me, but this is what you're seeing right now is a screensaver, and it pops on in a timed manner. And the timer is a little short for my taste, and this comes up and it dims the display very dim. So it's even hard to see the clock. So there's a couple adjustments you can make when you hit the display. One is you can do the brightness level of your phone, but you can also do the screensaver brightness level if you don't mind that. And you can punch out or push out the screensaver timer where it's only 5 minutes by default. Every 5 minutes your phone will dim. And it's nice for overnight, so you're not using as much electric, I guess. But during the day, it's kind of nice to have that clock display and that sort of thing. So you can push that all the way out. I believe it's all the way to 55 minutes. So that's almost an hour. And it wakes up once the call comes in, or if you touch the phone anywhere, any of the buttons. But that's a place you can kind of adjust that if you like. So the next key down is your volume control. Each piece of volume is separate. If I pick up the handset, I'm adjusting the handset volume. If I wait for the phone to ring, while it's ringing, I can adjust the ringer volume. If I wear a headset, I can adjust the headset volume. So it's all adjustable from that, depending on, you got to just make sure that it's doing the function. Pick up the handset first, hear the volume, and adjust it, or wait for the phone to ring and then adjust the ringer volume before picking up the handset. Over on the right-hand side of the phone is the buttons for, so over here on the right-hand side are more call-related functions, things like hang up and hold and that sort of thing. So let's kind of look at those now. The first one is hang up. This really is designed if you're wearing a headset. If you don't wear a headset, you won't use it much. But if you're wearing a headset, you can hit the button to hang up the phone. That's kind of nice. You don't have to deal with the speaker key a bunch or whatever. So that's where you'll hang it up. The next key down is the redial list. You saw earlier when I showed you on the display where it said redial and it showed the last number, but this will take you to the list so you can pick maybe the second or third person who called you last. And when you press that button, it takes you to a familiar place. It takes you to that call history, but it takes you straight to the outgoing call list. So you can now scroll over and pick, Mark here who called yesterday. You don't have to call just the last person that you dialed. So it's a nice little list way to get to, the second or third or fourth or fifth person that you dialed rather than just the last person. This is your hold key. It looks like a little pause key. When you press that key when you're on a call, it'll look like this on your display. You can see that the little pause symbol is up there. It'll actually be blinking and it'll tell you that the call's on hold. And to recover it, you'll just hit the corresponding key to where it's holding and it'll recover that off a hold. Remember what I said earlier, if a call comes in while you're on a call and you want to place the call you're on hold, you don't have to hit the hold key for that. You can just go to the line 2 key and hit the line 2. It'll automatically put the first caller on hold. So it saves you a step if you need a quicker response because phones only ring like 4 times before they go to voicemail. So, rather than you trying to figure out where was that hold key, you could just hit the line 2 key that'll be flickering and giving you caller ID and take yourself to put the first person on hold and grab the second call. So it makes it a little easier. Okay. And then this is your mute key. It mutes the handset. If you're on a headset, it'll mute that or speaker. It's on and off. When it's lit, it's on. You can sneeze, cough, whatever you need to do. Hit it again, it turns it off immediately. So it's just a way to mute. You can hear them. They can't hear you. And then the last key down is your speaker or your headset key. The speaker key is just that. It does not hang up on anyone. So if you hit speaker a bunch of times, it just rotates it between the handset and the speaker. If you're wearing a headset, when you went to those settings and I showed you with the ring, you could have scrolled straight down and changed your input from speaker to headset. And then you can just tap that button one time and it'll go straight to your headset if you're wearing a headset. Otherwise, you have to tap it twice to go to headset if you don't use that setting. So just so you know. So that's kind of the way the phone works. Hopefully those buttons help you. Let's quickly just review how the voicemail works, and that should be that. So here's kind of a sheet that'll be available to you on how the voicemail flows. There's not a lot of mystery here because voicemail kind of walks you through everything that you need to do. The area that you see in the box are all the ways you can access your voicemail, either from the phone that you sit at, or another person's phone, or from outside. You can call in and anything automated. Either you can call your own direct number if you have one and go to voicemail. Once you hear your own voice, you can hit star, or you can go ahead and call the main auto attendant and hit star, and then you'll have to do a few extra steps. But this gives you all the ways to access it. So you can access it day and night to see if someone's called you if you like, and that indicates in the box. The other part is more of a flow sheet, and this is when you're in your voicemail, the different functions you can do. And really, if you really look at it, there's only 3 things a voicemail does. It can play a message, you can create a message to send to somebody or make a message, or you can go into your options, your user options. And the options are going to be things like changing your greeting, changing your name, changing your passcode, the basic stuff that you did initially when you set up your voicemail. So when we're looking at playing the message, Basically, those will be any new messages or save messages that you have. This is where you're going to decide, am I going to keep this message or discard it? Or maybe I need to forward it to somebody else before I keep it or discard it. So those are kind of the questions you're going to be asking yourself when you're listening to your voicemail. Underneath where it says play, to play, you'll see that there's some cheats in there. If you're using your phone to rewind 5-second increments, you'll hit star. Star will back it up for 5 seconds. So, people sometimes leave you a message and say, call me back at 5544, and you're like, what? You can back it up and re-listen to that several times to try to get the number. It also will allow you to fast forward 5-second increments. I don't know why you need that. But then it also has a pause for 30 seconds. And at first I was like, well, why would anyone need to pause a message? But let's just say you're listening to your messages and someone walks into your office, then you could hit 1 to pause it, and that will give you 30 seconds to say, hey, let me check my voicemail, and I'll be right back with you. And then it starts playing the voicemail message from where you paused it. And then you can skip to the next message if you would like to as well. So there's some cheats that the system doesn't tell you, but everything else is a non-mystery. You'll be able to go through the voicemail very easily. Once you've listened to the voicemail, it'll ask you if you want to play it again, to answer the message, which means that it will call back the caller identification of whoever has called you. You can give it to another user, which means I can forward your message that you left me to somebody else in my organization. Or I can keep it, which will save it for later, or I can discard it, which will eliminate it off my system. Or if I wanted to, I can do a shortcut to make a new message. And you don't really need to do that so much, but that's basically the functions you have after you play the message. When you're done, if you decide, hey, I need to leave a message for somebody, you can press 6. And then you can dial the extension of the person you want to leave a message for. It'll go beep, and then you're leaving a message for them. This is how you would leave a message for somebody that you don't want to have to dial and listen to a bunch of rings. If you know they're not there, this might be a little quicker. Otherwise, you can just dial somebody. If they don't pick up after so many rings, it's going to go to voicemail eventually, unless it's a departmental type of ring. When you leave someone a message, you then can choose delivery options. You can also choose to review it. You can listen to it again. You can erase and re-record. You can append it, which means add to the end. And you can also do message options, like things like make confidential, which means that they can't forward it to anyone else. You can mark it as urgent, which would move it to the front of their list. You can get a return receipt so you know when they listen to it. Or you can set it up for a future delivery. So if you don't want the message going out until noon, you could set it up for noon for some reason. And then the last part is just your options that you will do initially when you go in. Before you set up your voicemail, you want to think of a couple things. What do you want your greeting to say? And do you need to write it out? Is that something that would help you? And then the second thing is what do you want your passcode to be? Because it's a passcode not only are you going to use to get into your voicemail all the time, but it's also a passcode you'll use if you ever do any hot desking. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about what you need in there, okay? So that's just give you the basic lay of the land. If you know how to access your voicemail by hitting the little voicemail key and then dialing in your PIN, which initially is going to be the same as your extension, and after you set it up, it'll be whatever you set it up to be, then you're going to be walked through any of these functions, so it'll be very easy. So that's what I have. I really appreciate you all attending. Hopefully this helps you through it. Remember, there are additional guides and training out there. Well, number one, there's a quick reference guide that's very handy. It'll give you a one-page kind of breakdown of what we went through here. And then there is a full manual that's available that will tell you deep details of every function, as well as a self-paced training called Feature Teacher that's available that'll allow you to kind of go through and kind of makes you go through all the steps if you need a little refresher. So thanks again for attending, and good luck with your new cutover and your new phone system.